Hey everyone! Welcome back to What If. Today we're doing yet another highly requested video following a Dragonette of Destiny. What if Tsunami had grown up in the Sea Kingdom? Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, she wouldn't have grown up. She'd be dead just like all of her sisters. And dozens of people commented things to that effect, mostly along the lines of, "Aw, too bad we can't do that, what if?" Well, nothing makes me want to do something like being told I can't, so here you have it. What if Tsunami grew up in the Sea Kingdom? Webbs was assigned the task of attempting to steal the deep blue egg in Queen Coral's hatchery. Key word being attempt. Webbs wasn't sure it would work. He wasn't sure about anything these days, only that he didn't want to fight in the war anymore, and this Dragonette might be his ticket out. He managed to distract the guards, to sneak inside and gently tuck the fragile blue orb into a woven sling. Webbs even slipped out undetected of the royal hatchery to begin his hasty escape from the underwater palace. It was sheer bad luck that he ran into Shark, of all dragons, on the way out. The general glared at him with narrowed eyes. "What are you doing here?" he asked sharply. Webb stammered, unable to come up with anything suitable to tell the harsh dragon. I... Shark's eyes darted to the sling hanging under Webb's neck. "What's that?" he snapped. "It's nothing," Webb started, taking an involuntary step back. Webbs felt his stomach drop into his talons as he watched Shark eyes dart from him to the hallway he was blocking, the hallway that led straight to the royal hatchery. He knew when the general connected the dots. He snarled, "Traitor!" and leapt towards Webbs, clouds of bubbles trailing off his razor-sharp claws. Webbs knew he wouldn't beat the Sea-Wing general in a fight. Tsunami lived on the outskirts of the Sea Kingdom. It was lonely. She didn't see other Sea-Wings often, out here on the edge of their kingdom. Shark said it was because they were so close to the deep sea. There were creatures that lived so far down, even the water was black at night, and the great Sea-Wing army wanted no business with them. But Tsunami liked it. Most of the time, Shark left her to her own devices, and she explored for miles and miles in every direction, finding her own adventure. Shark visited infrequently. Tsunami knew he had an important job, and to be honest, she didn't mind. It meant she got to do whatever she wanted all the time. Shark was distant with her. He was short at the best of times, and Tsunami knew he wasn't telling her the whole truth. But she never really minded much. Her life was good. Shark wasn't her father. He'd never told her who her parents were, or why they lived so far from the rest of the tribe. He'd strongly implied that he was hiding her out here so nobody would steal her and use her against him, though he'd never outright admitted it. Tsunami knew that if she so inclined herself, she could be annoyed about the half-truths. She did want to meet other Sea-Wings eventually and see the shallower parts of their kingdom, maybe even see land someday. But for now, she was quite happy with her life. Shark brought her things as she grew older. Special treats from real chefs like oyster taffy and peril candies. Weapons of various kinds for her to train with when she felt like it. Knickknacks from the other kingdoms he visited. But Tsunami's favorite thing about Shark's visits were his stories. When she was very young, he shared them in Aquatic. As she grew older, he taught her to read and brought thin stone tablets. Tsunami didn't enjoy reading over much, but sometimes it was nice to curl up in a bed of seaweed and trace the carefully carved words as she read. And some of the stories were really good. Her favorite was The Lost Princess, written about a princess who'd been lost, but discovered by her family. Tsunami liked the adventure parts, not the finding. The princess had many adventures finding her way home. Tsunami thought she would have liked to stay away and keep having adventures. That sounded better than living in a busy palace full of loud, boring dragons. And as she grew older, Tsunami had seen everything for miles and miles, all the creatures and plants and strange trenches. And although Shark rarely told her stories anymore, she remembered all of them, though she suspected they were heavily edited. But in any case, Tsunami knew that wherever it was Shark disappeared to for months on end, before he reappeared with new scars and dark eyes, she would find new things to see and do. Shark had told her she was an adrenaline junkie. Tsunami didn't agree with him, exactly, but life was getting a little dull out here in the middle of nowhere. So she made up her mind, and without even waiting for Shark to make his next visit, Tsunami packed her important things and favorite weapons into a seaweed bag and started swimming toward warmer, sunnier seas. Riptide had never been the same after his father's murder. He hadn't been the best, but he was still Riptide's dad, and he'd been killed deep in the supposed safety of their own palace. Riptide had joined the army, like most dragonets his age, but he'd never seen any action. He didn't know why, but General Shark had assigned him to guard duty, way out in the middle of nowhere. He'd always suspected that the general didn't like him, but, well, Riptide supposed his assignment made the answer pretty obvious. But today, for the first time, Riptide had finally found someone interesting. He could see someone swimming towards him, a distant figure slowly pulling closer through the azure water. But they were coming from outside the kingdom, so who could it be? She got close enough for him to see, and completely forgetting all his training and his excitement, Riptide signed, "Hey!" without even thinking. He mentally slapped himself in the snout, but forced himself to pay attention to the other Sea Wing's response. "Hey," she copied, slowly. She was staring at him with wide eyes, like she'd never seen another dragon before, Riptide thought with a snort. "What are you doing out here?" he asked curiously. He'd only met a few dragons who traveled this far out. It was only a few more miles from here to the deeper, wilder expanse of the ocean. She tilted her head and drifted to the side a little, still staring at him. No response. She seemed almost dazed. Riptide was about to ask if she was okay when he got his first good look at her wings, and the distinctive swirled markings coloring the delicate membrane. So, the strange royal's name was Tsunami. At some point, Riptide's brain checked out and he stopped thinking, "This is crazy!" every 3 seconds, which luckily allowed him to process things much faster. Her name was Tsunami, and she'd grown up in the deep, and Riptide was actually the second dragon she'd ever met in her life. Everything made sense, though, once he heard Shark's name. Riptide considered it as he swam. Everyone knew Shark didn't like Queen Coral. He thought she was too uninvolved, thought that the Sea Wings could be doing better in the war. But of course, Shark couldn't challenge the queen for the throne, and the queen only had one heir, a dragonet too young to be a useful pawn. Rumor had it Shark had been skulking around the palace for years, trying to find leverage in court to get his way. And suddenly, it made sense. Somehow, Shark had gotten his hands on a Sea Wing heir, one of only 3 royal Sea Wing females alive. And from the looks of it, Tsunami didn't even know she was meant to be the general's pawn. Riptide had convinced her to come with him. She didn't seem to know where she was going, but Riptide knew if he could get her to the summer palace, where Coral was now, the queen would recognize her daughter and accept her with open talons. Shark would have no way of bringing his plan to fruition. The more he thought about it, the more pieces of Shark's plan fell into place in Riptide's mind. The general would raise the princess in seclusion, check, ensuring that the only things she knew were what he wanted her to. Eventually he could convince her to challenge her mother for the throne, and then when she was queen, he'd be the driving force behind her. Tsunami wouldn't have the experience to lead, so of course she would have turned to the only dragon she'd ever known. And Shark would end up as close as he could ever get to ruling the Sea Wing tribe himself. Tsunami herself seemed like, well, a fun dragon, to be honest. Nothing like any of the royals Riptide had seen before. She kept breaking away to chase interesting fish, claws extended competitively, or to inspect interesting rock formations or weeds. Riptide supposed it would have been pretty boring, growing up so far away from everything. He couldn't wait to see her face when they got to the summer palace. Tsunami had always wondered what the palaces Shark had told her about would look like when she saw them. She'd pictured the colors and the beauty of them, and of course many, many dragons to fill them. But nothing she'd thought of had been anything close to the real thing. The summer palace, as Riptide had called it, began underwater and rose in tall, elegant spirals of stone. There were hundreds of plants, in the water and out of it. The palace was actually built partially on land, and there were so many sounds. Dragon sounds, bird sounds, waves crashing into smooth stone. And the dragons. There were so many colors, green and blue and purple, pale pink and white gray and shining sky blue. Tsunami was floored for a few minutes. "Wow," she murmured, floating on top of the tumultuous waves with Riptide. "Yeah," he grinned softly. "I'll take you inside." "Inside?" She rolled excitedly in the waves. Tsunami bet it was even more beautiful inside the palace. She'd never really felt bad about missing out on the rest of her tribe growing up, but this? This was starting to make her rethink that. "Yeah," he said. "There's someone I want you to meet." Tsunami followed Riptide inside, swimming through a dark, narrow tunnel. She exited into a wide bay, and the noises here were even louder and more musical. It was almost too much to handle. Tsunami, eyes wide, was a little lost for a few moments. Riptide had her talon, tugging her over to the shore. Tsunami absent-mindedly spread her wings to slow him. She wasn't ready to move yet. The noise and the sight of hundreds of dragons was washing over her like a cold current of water. Strangely, the noise began to slowly stop, until the entire palace was completely, eerily silent. Tsunami turned to Riptide, confused. He was talking to another dragon, wearing armor that matched his own, who looked extremely confused. "Yeah," Riptide smirked. "Like I said, we need to talk to Queen Coral." So, it turned out Tsunami was the lost princess. She had a mom and a sister and an uncle who was Shark, who was also now in prison awaiting the queen's judgment. Coral was a lot to take in. She was a little whacked, in Tsunami's opinion. But an enemy was pretty cool, and Riptide was allowed to stick around, so it wasn't too bad. Tsunami got to see a lot of very interesting things very fast. But she was happy she'd met everyone, she decided. Tsunami knew that even though Shark had lied to her and hidden her from her real family, she was on the path to good things, and she intended to enjoy herself. Well, that went really well. Basically, Webbs wasn't as stealthy as he needed to be, and Shark saw himself a big fat opportunity, with some stock Ripnami thrown in for flavor. What do y'all think of this idea? I know a lot of y'all thought Tsunami wouldn't have made it if Webbs had never stolen her, so I tried to figure out how things could have changed after he stole her, but before the Talons got her. What other ways might her life have turned out different, do you think? Anyways, remember to check out my other what-ifs if you enjoyed this one. Feel free to subscribe or leave a thumbs up or a comment. Thanks so much for watching, and please have a blessed week.
When we